Hello everyone, Kevin here with Kevin's Way Works. Thanks for joining me for part 5 of my vertical arcade cabinet build. In this video, I have a few things left to build, assemble, and install in the cabinet so I can get it fired up and ready for software configuration and for testing. So sit back and enjoy. First thing I'm going to do is install these blocks of wood which will clamp the TV into the frame. There are 2, and there's going to be 1 on each side. Right here I'm using a Forstner bit, and I'm going to make a hole for the power cable to fit through. And here's the computer I'll be using. This is an HP EliteDesk 800G4 desktop mini. I'm going to mount this right about here, which is going to require a custom platform, so let's get to building that. The process is pretty much self-explanatory, so let's just sit back and watch while I go about the build. So what I'm doing here is I'm cutting a notch so I can wrap some heavy-duty hook and loop around the shelf and computer, and it will hold everything in place. It also needs a slot in the back edge for the hook and loop to fit through, so I'll be drilling it out with a Forstner bit, and I'll finish it off with a file. And there is the finished product. Just a few holes for the screws, and it's ready for installation. Which you don't get to see because my fat head is in the way again. Look at that, guys, perfect fit. And the screws are beautifully countersunk. So this is a Project Source power strip that I got from Lowe's. I like this one because it has accessible screw holes on each end, which makes installation a lot easier. And Lowe's still does carry these, they're just going to be in a different packaging. Sorry again about the poor camera placement, but I think you can see enough of this to get an idea of what I'm actually doing. I'll be using this scrap piece of wood as a spacer to get the power strip perfectly aligned with the edge of the cabinet. And there it is, looking good. All right, let's see if the cable fits. And it does perfectly. What I'm doing here is I'm routing the cable through a block of wood that will be used to screw it into the side of the cabinet. And the reason for this is because the back panel isn't super strong, and this will help keep the cable from getting yanked, which would damage the wood because it's pretty darn thin. Nothing special going on here, just some plywood cut to make a mount for the power supply. This power supply can get pretty warm, so I drilled some holes through the block of plywood that will allow for better airflow. A little bit of glue and some staples, and it is good to go. I'm not a lefty, so here I am having trouble using my left hand to screw in 3 countersunk screws. A little shaky, but I did manage to get it installed and ready for the power supply. These are just your typical inexpensive arcade buttons that you can get on Amazon, along with the joysticks and a USB encoder board, which translates the joystick movements to keyboard presses. What I'm showing you here is the new style connectors that these have now. They used to have several individual pins, which was a pain because you had to slide wires onto each one individually, and it was hard to get them in and in the correct place. The holes are a little tighter now because of the paint, so if yours are tight like mine are after painting, just give them a little sanding and the button should slip right in. This plastic black nut is what's used to hold the buttons in. One side has these little ridges on it, so be sure that side is the one that faces the wood. These don't have to be perfectly aligned unless the buttons actually have printed text on the other side. And don't rely on hand tightening either. And I don't show it here, but I used a large adjustable wrench to tighten these just a bit snug. Snuggy guys, that's all that's required. And I'm going to do these remaining buttons off camera. If you recall from one of my earlier videos, I cut recesses in the bottom of the controller panel for the joysticks. What I am doing here is I cut some poplar and plywood strips to size, which will get screwed to the joysticks. These will then be used to mount the joysticks into those recesses. And there they are, all ready for installation. Let's get these holes pre-drilled and ready for the joysticks and screws. Oh, that's awesome. These little black discs go on the joystick shafts. They basically serve to keep dust and debris out and to hide the holes in the console. Next, I will install the joystick balls. I don't show it here, but I wrapped a piece of leather around the shaft and used pliers to keep it from turning while I hand tighten the ball. You don't have to go all gorilla on them, guys. Just snug them up so they don't unscrew. This is the USB encoder board. Each switch has a different port on the encoder board, which gets mapped to key presses, which the games then use to translate to movement and button presses. It's pretty simple, and it works on Linux, Windows, Raspberry Pi, and even Mac OS. I grabbed a scrap square of 1/2-inch plywood to use as a mount for the USB encoder boards. I just held the board in place by hand and carefully drilled with a drill bit. I forgot to film it, but I have 4 PC standoffs screwed onto the USB encoders. To hold the standoffs into the plywood, I just used a little dab of CA glue in each hole. I then just pressed the encoder boards in place. I'm mounting the USB encoders here because the cables need to be able to reach the buttons and the joysticks. Just 2 screws, guys, is all that's needed. These USB encoders only have 1 joystick port, which is why I am initially using 2 here. Now this didn't work out, and I will explain more on that in the next video in the series. So I'm going to go ahead and plug all the buttons into 1 encoder board. There are 12 3-pin button ports, so there are plenty of them. Any port is fine because we'll be handling the mappings for each button and the joysticks through the software. All right, guys, no need to bore you with this. I'm just gonna quickly plug everything up where it goes. It doesn't matter which USB port you use on the PC. Oh, and one thing I just thought of regarding these HP EliteDesk PCs that you really should know before you buy one. They don't have HDMI ports built in. They have 2 display ports. So what I did to work around this is I just got a DisplayPort to HDMI adapter. And that completes the actual build of the cabinet. We are done. So here's a quick look at Zeke's Peak, and if you look closely, you'll see the problem I ran into with using 2 controller boards. So as you can see right here, I'm playing ice cold beer. Everything is working properly, but this is after several hours of troubleshooting and trying various things until I got it figured out. Keep an eye out for the next video where I go over in detail how everything inside the cabinet is connected and how it all works on the OS and software side, and I will also show you how I fixed that problem I was talking about. That's all I have for now, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I want to thank you for watching. Kevin's Way Works.
Uh-oh.